I had such a great conversation about the 1993 World Series and several Toronto Blue Jay players and memories and stories yesterday on Throwback Thursday with Rob Butler. Well, there was so much goodness in that conversation, so much still to talk about and get to. So on today's Locked On Blue Jays, I'm thrilled to say that we will again get some Blue Jays insight and Blue Jays stories from Rob Butler.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays. Locked On Blue Jays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Reminder, you can take in and catch every Toronto Blue Jay game on SiriusXM. If you're taking in today, Friday's Locked On Blue Jay podcast episode on YouTube, hello, I see you, I thank you, I appreciate you. If you haven't already, please do hit that like, that comment, and that subscribe. And to the everydayers making the Locked On Blue Jay podcast your first podcast listen every day, I thank you for that as well. Hit that 5-star rating. And for those of you who took time to send me nice comments and messages and that really enjoyed the Rob Butler interview from yesterday, thank you for that. I did too, and I'm so happy that you did. Today, my gosh, more with Rob Butler. Today, we deep dive that Game 6. Remember, yesterday on Throwback Thursday was a lot of deep diving that incredible Game 4 and that Curt Schilling Game 5, what Rob Butler had a really good game in. So today, we get to Game 6. Everydayers will remember that I made an all-Canadian team a few weeks back, maybe even a few months back at this point now, a pitching staff included, of Canadian players or Canadians who have played for the Toronto Blue Jays, and Rob Butler has insight and comments on all these players. It's a lot of fun. So let's jump into more on the Locked On Blue Jays podcast with Rob Butler. Finally, as we deep dive the 93 World Series with Rob Butler, I want to turn to Game 6 and that almost a Darren Daulton story here, but what absolutely amazes me, Rob, to this day, first of all, Ricky Henderson, the way he plays with Mitch Williams' mind at the beginning of that inning. Remember, Mitch Williams would have that, he would see the sign, then get set. The next time he would see the home plate is when he was about to deliver it, right? So as soon as he sees the sign and gets set before the first pitch, Ricky calls time. And the umpire, Darren Daulton, and Ricky Henderson are out of there because they know Mitch Williams on the best of times, who knows where this ball is going, right? He's about to look up and see everybody's gone. Who knows where this is going? Rob, there's no one on the camera anymore, on the frame. They're out of there. And Williams, remember, he helicopters himself into the mound trying to hold up his momentum on that pitch. After the second pitch of that at bat, Rob, Darren Daulton's got to go up. Like, when do you ever see that? There's the closer that needs a mound visit 2 pitches in. That's what Ricky Henderson did to this guy. That whole inning is just unbelievable. But Rob, that the touch 'em all Joe home run, when Mitch Williams looks in for the sign from Darren Daulton on that pitch, he shakes him off and then gets to that pitch and the rest is history. Rob, I always wonder, did Darren Daulton, did he think this Mitch Williams to this day? Do these guys think about, my goodness, what would have happened if I had just thrown that pitch that was called? And what's so incredible, Rob, is, and I want to know how much you remember about this aspect of it. The on-deck batter was not John Olerud. It was Alfredo Griffin who would pinch run from, right? So all due respect to Alfredo, you talk about a long-time Blue Jay. He's almost Tony Fernandez lore in Blue Jay history, right? Like, Alfredo was a big deal in Toronto Blue Jay history for a while there. But all due respect to Rob, I might prefer me in the on-deck circle to Alfredo Griffin, to be totally honest with you here. So it was going to be Joe Carter or bust, at least for me watching. I remember thinking that. You're on the bench there. Is there a sense of, okay, this has got to be go time. It needs to be Joe. You're only down by the 1 run, I guess, right? So, and Ricky Henderson's that tying run on second. So maybe it's not the end of the world as Alfredo could get you that slap hit. But you watching it, Rob, do you notice that?
Well, it's funny when I go back and watch it now, you can kind of see, like, earlier in the at bat that Joe had, he got a pitch down in on him and Joe swung and missed it.
Totally flat-footed, totally fooled. It was the previous pitch, Rob. It was the previous pitch.
Yeah, so sometimes pitchers think that they can go back and do the same thing, not realizing that sometimes professional hitters are setting them up. You know what I mean? They'll look bad on the pitch, and the hitter will know he's going to come back at me with that same pitch again at some point, and this time I'm going to be ready for it. You know what I mean? I think it kind of, like, hitters unknowingly have a way of doing that. They'll look bad on a curveball early in the bat and all of a sudden get the same curveball and knock it out of the park or get a base hit with it, right? So, I mean, the whole thing was set up like it was supposed to happen. It was just unbelievable the way it all went down with that whole inning, starting Ricky Henderson doing what he did and getting into Mitch Williams' head. Because Ricky was the ultimate leadoff hitter.
Man.
He could lead the league in walks, lead the league in leadoff home runs, lead the league in first pitch home runs. So how do you pitch to a guy like that? You know what I mean? Who can do all of that? You know what I mean? In at bats, like he was so menacing with everything. So guys always had to overthink or try too hard. And I mean, he had that advantage over guys. And when he did that to Mitch, I definitely think it rattled him. He tried to get it back, but he couldn't. Obviously, it was definitely difficult for him to also get Ricky on base. He's also a base stealing threat. Got the most stolen bases of all time, like 10 million or something. Like the guy was unbelievable. Made it look way too easy. Didn't even know how he did. I remember asking him, "How do you what's the secret to stealing bases?" And he actually said, "I don't know. I just do it." I was like, okay, so that's good to know. And it's funny when you ask professionals these questions about stuff like that. A lot of it is they don't really know. They're just good at it. You know what I mean? They're just so good, and they do what they're good at all the time. That's kind of what their go-to answer is. I just do it. I just do what I'm good at, and there's no real thought or technique to it. It's just go. So, anyways, him having that pressure on Mitch and getting on base added to it. So the rest of the bats are going to be difficult because he had to face Devo, Molitor, Carter. You know, all these guys are coming up. And how do you get around that? I mean, some guys are they can switch hit. People can switch hit, right? So you can't escape the lefty thing, right? There was no getting around it. It's going to be a tough inning for him. So when Joe came up, I mean, obviously it was the first and third, first and second. I can't remember.
First and second. Yep.
First and second. In his mind, he probably wasn't thinking home run because I know that they were talking about like, let's not hit home runs. Let's try to get guys on and get the train rolling again. But with Joe and with his natural way of, I mean, he's got like 400 home runs, I think, in his career. For him to have that at bat and roll the way it was rolling, and I felt like looking back at it now, like he set him up to throw that same pitch and to get it and not miss. I mean, it was incredible. Like in that situation, 2 strikes on you, World Series, Game 6, 9th inning. Like for Joe to not even be sweating, you know what I mean? Like, I would be a puddle. So first of all, for me, I'd be a puddle. But he was so like in the moment and calm and cool, like he always was. And just Joe Carter, man, like just a legend. Wow. And another guy who could probably be in the Hall of Fame. Like, what more do you got to do in the major leagues to get to do it? You know what I mean? He had an unbelievable career and was the ultimate guy, the ultimate moment, the right guy, and boom, World Series champions.
What incredible insight, Rob. I've seen that a trillion times. It always stands out to me how Mitch Williams shook it off. And now to hear your insight, it was probably Dalton wanting to go to a fastball or Dalton knowing, hey, this batter's going to be ready for that. Let's not let this veteran fool us here. Let's go to the fastball. And as soon as Joe saw Williams shake his head, Joe's reaction is probably like, woohoo, gotcha. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I've never even thought of that before. That's incredible. And you've touched on Ricky Henderson. You've touched on Darren Dalton. You know, you had Devo, you had Ruben Amaro, you had Vernon Wells as a rookie, you had Sean Green as a rookie, and then again in '99, you had a lot of different outfielders around you in your time with the Blue Jays and the Phillies. Who did you take some things from? You mentioned you tried to take some things from Ricky. Who'd you take some things from offensively, and who'd you take some things from defensively? Who or someone I didn't even mention there, who you really appreciated picking their brain?
You know, I got a chance to do that with a lot of guys because everybody was really close. You know, Dick Schofield helped me out a lot. Devon White helped me out a lot, you know, with my defense and how to play guys and how to get jumps and how to practice properly, you know, practice running to the spot, not looking at the ball, like judging, like acting like you know where it's going to land. He taught me how to do that. And really just trying to become more calm as a player. You know, so many guys like Darren Dalton probably was one of the most influential on me mentally. Because I had a pretty good year when I was with the Phillies. I batted almost 300. You know, I got
297, I think it was. Yeah, like that's 300.
I got sent back down. I was batting almost 300. I got sent back down. I don't know why, but I did. I got sent back down halfway through the season back to AAA. I was doing really well as a pinch hitter. And Darren was probably the biggest influence for me to like trust myself and be relaxed. Because I was, you know, as a baseball player, I was definitely I lived the moment 24/7. So I was always anxietized and worried about the game, and you know, there was a lot of times where I was actually very nervous before playing. So it was, you know, I had to really learn how to relax and try to just be what I was in the minor leagues because there is such a major difference between playing the major leagues and the minor leagues. And the minor leagues are very relaxed. There's hardly anybody in the stands. And when you get to the majors, it's constantly worry and stress. Worry if you're even playing in the lineup. You know, for me, I was really just mostly a fourth outfielder. So you check the lineup, you're not playing, you don't play for 2 weeks, and you get in there, but you're still anxietized the whole time. It's difficult, right? So Darren Dalton helped me the most with that. Like he really taught me how to go to like positive thoughts in my mind and visualize being successful all the time. And, I would say he was probably the biggest influence on my baseball career and really in my life. And the way I teach baseball now is that's the first thing I tell kids, man. Just you gotta learn how to be in routines and think positive and your positive outlook and visualize good things, not the bad things. And you'll have more fun and success playing.
More with World Series champion Rob Butler in just a moment here on the Locked On Blue Jays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And keep in mind that all the Toronto Blue Jay games, of course, available for you on Sirius XM. Coming up, we're going to go through my all-Canadian team of Canadians who have played for the Toronto Blue Jays. Again, every position, pitching staff, and Rob Butler, as you can imagine, has great insight, and we have a lot of fun with that conversation. First, I wanted to mention that I have 2 pairs of Bird Dog stretchy shorts. And so in other words, I want to talk about my 2 favorite pairs of shorts because they have become number 1 and number 2 in my rotation with the weather, thankfully getting better, right? Now, they fit way better than regular shorts. So the regular shorts are made of like that, that stiff, what would you say, restricting cotton. Well, Bird Dogs has fixed that issue. They've invented a cloud knit fabric. It looks just like khaki, but it stretches. So you get a way slimmer fit, and you don't have to sacrifice any movement. The fit and the comfort, that's what you're going to like about Bird Dog stretchy shorts and the stretchy pants. Bird Dog uses anti-stink sweat wicking fabric. It helps keep you cool and dry all day long. Go to birddogs.com/lockedonmlb. Enter the promo code LockedOnMLB for a free Yeti-style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedonmlb for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take off your bird. I mean, you're going to feel comfortable with them. And can I show you here? I've got my free Yeti-style tumbler. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays, here with Rob Butler. Yes, that Rob Butler. Yes, indeed. You're talking about Blue Jay World Series. Yeah, that Rob Butler. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. You talking about the new manager for the Toronto? Yes, that Rob Butler here joining us here on Locked On Blue Jays. Rob, want to run something by you here. Just love to get your take on your thoughts, your memories on any of these players here. I did a baseball team of all Canadians who have played for the Toronto Blue Jays. Mm-hmm. Want to get you to, what do you know about these guys? What do you remember about these guys? Anything along those lines, and any comment you have. And then, hey, you know what, Craig, I might have done this a little differently with the roster construction here. So let's have some fun with this. At first base, I don't think you have a problem with this one. Let's go Vladimir Guerrero Jr., shall we? At first base, I mean, let's start off with a bang here. Let's start off with an easy one, shall we? Yeah. And then if we move to second base, now I've got Dave McKay at second base, Rob. I don't know what you remember about Dave McKay, but he was an original Blue Jay, a Canadian playing on the original Blue Jays. To me, Rob, to me, I have to have this guy on the team. What do you remember about Dave McKay?
Oh, 100%. I mean, they should have had. I mean, there wasn't very many Canadians back then playing, so it's incredible that he was on the team. But it's funny, I remember that 1977 team and with Doug Alt and all those guys, and I remember them talking about, I was only 7 years old, I was young, but I do remember because I followed the Blue Jays in the clippings and all that in the paper, and another guy who's just ultra competitive and overcoming. I mean, it's hard to be a Canadian to make it to the major leagues, especially in the 60s and the 70s, like how these guys do it, way back in the day. Where did they learn to play baseball? Who helped them learn to play baseball? You know what I mean? Like, who helped Dave McKay play baseball? Especially if you grew up in Canada playing, for me and my brother in the 80s growing up in East York. I mean, we were playing with a bunch of East York Jags as kids who were all looking, beat people up and not play much baseball. So it was for him to do that and be on the original team, man, that's hard to do and incredible.
Such a good point. Yeah, my gosh. Yeah. His path to baseball, you're exactly right. I mean, in those days, you played baseball in Canada in the 2 summer months. And then what'd you do? How'd you learn the rest and develop the rest of that? That's a great point there. At third base, he had 1 season with the Blue Jays. It wasn't his best season at all, but of course, I've got Corey Koski as my third baseman, Rob. What are your thoughts on Corey Koski? Oh,
what a great player. Played great player for Minnesota. And then, he had his, he got injured and he had his concussion problems and things going on. And, I think a lot of guys find out when they come play for the Blue Jays, it's not easy. If you're Canadian, It is not easy, man. Mm-hmm. And, for me as a rookie, it was very hard. Nobody even knew who I was. And then suddenly everybody knew who I was. And, my family, I didn't even know where my family were asking for tickets and where am I sitting? And I'm like, I don't care where you're sitting. I got Cito Gaston as my manager here. I got to play baseball and play good. Like, stop bugging me. So it was difficult. It was difficult. And I would imagine, if he had one of his, downside years, it's distracting, very distracting playing in your hometown. I know all the guys that I ever played with, whenever they had to go play in their hometown on the road, it was the worst weekend of their lives. They didn't like it. There's there's just too much distraction, too many people bugging you. You know, you grew up here, I grew up with you, or like you're totally out of your routines. And I mean, I felt that, I lived that. It was very difficult for me to play, especially my family's in Newfoundland. You know, they're watching every day. You know, I have I'm actually quarter Mohawk. You know, I have my native family as well, and you just kind of carry all that. Like you feel like it's on your shoulders. You know what I mean?
Wow.
I didn't have a kind of like a prep of playing on another major league team for 5 years and then come to Toronto. I was kind of like, here you go, take it, man. Carry 30 million Canadians on your shoulder, and you better play good because we got to win the World Series again.
Well, oh my goodness! Wow. Well, that brings us to our shortstop, who probably dealt with a lot of that then, and probably was upset to be traded from the Blue Jays. And I know on the big league level, he played at second and third, but I'm absolutely assuming that Brett Lowry could play shortstop for me on this team, Rob.
Yeah. Well, you know, he oh man, hyper intensive. Talk about hyper intensive guy. Oh my God, I think he drank 50 Red Bulls per game.
Oh my God.
And he wondered why he was a nervous wreck all the time. But the ultimate, like, grow up Canadian kid, played in the junior national team, senior national team in the same year. I mean, I never toot my own horn. I don't go there, but I also did that. I played on the junior national team when I was 18, and in the Olympics in 1988. I got to play on both teams. I think Brett was the second guy to do that.
Isn't there a Pan Am Games in there for you, Rob, as well?
I didn't play in the Pan Ams. No,
you didn't play in the Pan Am. No,
I played 2 World Championships, Goodwill Games. I missed the Pan Ams. The Pan Ams was
Goodwill.
before that.
I think maybe it's the Goodwill I'm thinking of. Okay.
Yeah. So Brett Lowry, I mean, ultimate Canadian, growing up in Canada, playing all his baseball here, like all world player, 18 years old, totally destined for the big leagues. Milwaukee drafted him, right? I know Milwaukee drafted him in the first round, and he came to the Blue Jays. And again, probably not easy, man. Like this, you're always Canadian, right? You're Canadian. Like, how do you feel? It's always, you know, you're Canadian. It's not, no, I just want to be a major league baseball player. It doesn't matter who I am or I'm from. You know what I mean? So.
Wow. And then behind the plate, now all due respect to George Kataris, but I mean, certainly, now truth be told, Rob, I was a little underwhelmed with his tenure as the Toronto Blue Jays. I know I'm in the minority there, but easy to have as my catcher, Russell Martin.
Yeah. Well, you know, I mean, before he came to the Jays, he'd been through a whole lot of wars with other teams, you know what I mean? The Dodgers and Pirates, and going to the playoffs every year and probably not missing much time, and kind of like the Pat Borders type where he wants to catch every game. So you kind of get worn down mentally and physically, you know, but ultimately all the guys would tell you, probably the pitching staff would say, you know, his calling of games, the way he handled games, the way he handled pitchers, amazing. You know what I mean? Did all the little things that really matter in the background that people don't recognize. He probably could have had better numbers. But again, there's these distractions, man, that just take you out of your whole normal sensory of the way you should be playing and what's happening all the time. You're, you know, I'm Canadian too. Like, you just hear all this stuff all the time. It's just like, you know, but you know, he's the ultimate Blue Jay. They gave him a jersey on the field, and you know, everybody loves Russell Martin because he's a little guy who played third base, moved to catcher, and it was, I mean, if he was a third baseman, he wouldn't have made it to the majors. You know, he took a chance and learned how to be a catcher at a later time in his life, and was, I mean, the ultimate stud catcher. So we were lucky to have him.
Yeah, I mean, I can't disagree there. Let's move to the outfield. So I've got the only Canadian to win a World Series for the Blue Jays. I've got Rob Butler in my outfield. That's not yes, I do. You cannot dispute that. I know you're humble. You cannot dispute that. I've got Dalton Pompey in the outfield. The poor Dalton Pompey, I think to this day, is still standing on third base in Kansas City from that 2015 playoffs. My God, from game 7. Oh boy, too soon. Okay, move on. But I've also got Rob Ducey out there now. That means no Rich Butler. I'm sorry. And that means no Michael Saunders. Either one could have made this team. Absolutely. Yes. The reason I went with Ducey is just growing up, Robin, and it might've been in your sweet spot growing up as well. I just felt like he was a big, you talk about Dave McKay, the Canada looking, how did this guy even make? I felt like that was almost the case for Rob Ducey. Wasn't a lot of Canadians at the big league level when Rob Ducey was around. And I felt like Ducey was part of the mix for several years. So from a longevity standpoint, I went with Ducey as well. So I've got yourself, I've got Pompey, and I've got Ducey. Do you agree with that outfield? Or would you say, no, Saunders has got to be in there? No, Rich Butler's got to be in there.
Well, my brother probably could have been in there if he played longer. You know, he got that September call-up. And, I mean, he had a great year in Syracuse that year. He was a 20-20 guy, 20 homers, 20 stolen bases. Like, I think only 3 guys had ever done that. batted 300, 100 ribbies. Like, it just has incredible.
Jeez.
So, but it was still difficult to get him called up. So he got to play 1 month with the Toronto Blue Jays. He did very well. I remember being at his second game. He got 3 hits off of Kenny Hill. I'll never forget that.
Jeez.
And then he got taken in the expansion draft. So he went to Tampa, did very well, made their opening day roster, was on the original Tampa team. Hit 7 home runs that year, but got injured a lot. Right, Rich was full of injuries in his career. Reconstruction done in his shoulder. He broke his thumb. And for us, with our dad and the way he raised us, we always played injured. You know what I mean? It didn't matter. You have to literally break your limbs off to be taken out of the lineup. So Rich played hurt too much, and it caught up to him. So his career was very short, but he has major league home runs. He hit the original home run off of Roy Halladay, the first one he ever gave up. So he did amazing things in his career, but not enough to be in the outfield for the Blue Jays. I would say that Rob Ducey for sure is a no-brainer, because he definitely came up in the middle 80s, late 80s with the toughest outfield in baseball. I mean, Jordan Bell,
yeah, good points.
Garfield, Lloyd Mosby, he's in that mix with those guys, right? And coming from a guy who played softball. I think he played softball in where he grew up, in Waterloo, Kitchener. Where did he grow up? Waterloo, Cambridge? Cambridge. He was a softball player.
Wow.
He wasn't playing baseball as a kid. You know what I mean? Just the ultimate athlete. You know what I mean? Had that nice slim body, really fast, good arm, good hitter, good swing. So the Blue Jays gave him an opportunity, and he made the most of it. You know what I mean? He grinded it out in the minors, did everything he could to get to the big leagues. And he was a good Major League Baseball player, with really no one for sure to teach him how to play the game properly. He only when he got to pro ball, it was definitely a different time. It wasn't a lot of, you're kind of on your own. You know what I mean? So for him to make it and be as established as he was as a major leaguer, I mean, it's a miracle. Rob Ducey is like a baseball miracle. It's
wow.
You never put your money on him, because he was like, for all of us Canadians. I went to my first minor league season in St. Catharines. I was in New York Penn League. All the guys were like looking at my bio, like, what is East York Collegiate? They thought I was in a college in America. They didn't know it was my high school in Toronto.
Wow.
Right? These guys are all Stanford and Florida State and Florida Atlantic University and all these big schools. So it was always surprising for them to see Canadians who never went to America to play baseball, right? To do all your baseball in Canada. They just couldn't figure out how that possibly could have happened, because they really truly believed, Americans, that it snowed every day.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, we don't have a summer, so it was funny to hear all those guys say that. So for Rob Ducey to overcome all of that and be as good as he was is amazing.
And then a DH, I mean, Matt Stairs. Matt Stairs is my DH. My goodness.
Yeah.
What has Matt Stairs meant to Canadian baseball, Rob?
Well, Matty played together in the Olympics in 1988, and he was an all-world shortstop. Matty could do anything.
Wow.
Matty smoked. He liked to smoke, which is funny for such a tremendous athlete that he was. He could do anything. He could play hockey. He was incredible. And he was all-world shortstop, batted over 300 in the World Championships against top-level playing. Never played baseball in America as well. Played in the MBI program out in Vancouver, which I also did. And, really was a guy who he was just the ultimate. He also was the ultimate Canadian grinder. He was going to make it to the big leagues no matter what. He's a small little guy, undersized, ended up being an outfielder primarily and a DH in the big leagues. Became a bigger guy, took care of himself, worked out a lot, for sure, quit smoking. And, he's got I think he's got the most pinch hit home runs of all time. Like, this guy did things that nobody's ever done. The little man from New Brunswick. Like, he is just, he's one of my favorite teammates, because he's so much fun, so much energy. We played the Cuba in the 1988 World Championships, and he got the first hit of the game, and that was the only hit we got that game.
Wow.
And it was against Rene Arocha, who was throwing 98 miles an hour.
My goodness.
Matty, all of us Canadians who made it to the majors, teams kind of just gave us a chance. Nobody really ever thought we could do it. You know what I mean? Like, we get a signing bonus for $5,000, and because you're Canadian, here's an opportunity. There wasn't really a thought, oh yeah, we're signing John Olerud, he's going to be in the big leagues in 3 years. We're signing Pat Henkin, he's going to be in the big leagues in 4 years. There's kind of like a path for them. And we're signing Matt Stairs, we're signing Rob and Rich Butler. They'll be gone in 2 years.
Good luck. Yeah.
Yeah, they might get to Myrtle Beach, and they'll be done, whatever. But you know what I mean? We hit 300. We're hitting 300, and we know Myrtle Beach, Dunedin, Knoxville, Syracuse, we're still batting 300. And it's because of our Canadian mentality. which coaches will tell you they love. Garth Orge and Dennis Holmberg and all these guys, they love being around the Canadian guys because there's just something different. There was just something different.
Wow.
You put me and Rich and Stairsy in the outfield, in a minor league outfield, spring training, and we are standing there with 8 guys from California, Florida, Texas, and they're all big. They're all running 6'3", 60s. They all can throw 90 miles an hour from the outfield.
Jeez.
So when you look at that and you're going to put your money on certain guys, they would never put it on the 3 Canadians. It's going to be the other guys. But the 3 Canadians were the guys who pulled it off and made it. You know what I mean? Like there's just something built in a Canadian athlete that is special.
Wow.
And I know there's many guys before me who didn't get an opportunity because they just didn't recognize that. You get a chance to play every day and develop, and your mental toughness and your physical toughness and your willingness to do whatever it takes. A lot of guys got passed over because I don't think scouts or baseball people really believe that Canadians could do that. And we've, over time have proved them so wrong. Like Joey Votto, these guys now. It's amazing.
That's so incredible, Rob, to the younger fans watching this right now. I think that would be such an eye-opener to see how far Canada baseball has come in general, and really, Rob, maybe more to your point, is it more accurate? It's more accurate to say how much it's being now recognized, because it already had come far. It was already legit, but it wasn't recognized, right? And now certainly the opportunities are fast and furious. I have to absolutely love that. Now, on my Canadian who played for the Blue Jays pitching staff, Rob, and I love this. Now, I was able to go righty lefty even, so I've even got some balance here. So, dealer's choice. Pick out any of these pitchers that maybe you face or that you have a thought about. So, I've got Sean Hill, I've got Jeff Francis, I've got Scott Richmond, I've got Dennis Boucher, I've got Scott Diamond. Anyone stand out to you there?
Well, they all stand out to me. Paul Spaljarek as well.
Well, no, we're going to get to the relievers in a minute here.
Oh, okay, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, we're going to get to the I've got a couple of relievers. Yes, I love that you mentioned him though. He was your teammate in '99, so you're being a good teammate there. I love that. But just from the starters though, so from the Sean Hill, Jeff Francis, Scott Richmond, Danny Boucher, Scott Diamond. What are your thoughts there?
Well, again, the same kind of thing. Like these guys came out of nowhere to be really good major leaguers. Scott Richmond went to junior college and went to some small school, 4-year school, and was not on anybody's radar, but came out of the woodwork just because he's a grinder. Jeff Francis from BC. I mean, he's a first-round pick, so it's kind of known that he would have an opportunity. You know what I mean? He had a great career in Colorado, in a tough park to play in. So, I mean, he was a no-brainer and an unbelievable guy. The most calm, cool, intelligent, smart guy I've ever been around. He kind of he makes you smarter standing beside him. It's funny, just standing beside Jeff Francis. He's a good dude. You know what I mean? Good, just nice, soft-spoken, good guy, man. I coached them in Team Canada here and there. I just love being around them. But I know the guys who came up as pitchers, I mean, it's such a hard road because you're competing against guys who are just so good. So you got to be ultra competitive. And, for Canadian guys, we didn't really learn proper arm mechanics. I didn't learn how to throw a baseball until I hurt my arm in 95. I was always throwing wrong. So I hurt my arm, and my trainer with the Phillies taught me how to throw properly. So I know all these guys growing up, it wasn't easy for them because you're playing on crappy fields. You got a coach who's going to pitch you 150 pitches in the game because he has no idea how to protect your arm, and there's no one teaching these guys proper mechanics. So for them all to come up and be major leaguers and play for Toronto as well as Canadians, it's difficult, man, because you're the guy in the mound, you're the guy waiting. I mean, everybody's now zoning in on you. And to overcome all of that, it's not easy. So I know that's not, that's why it's hard to find these Canadians who could be, for the Blue Jays, 20-game winners, Cy Young guys, because it's hard, man. And for them to do it, it's I mean, they're all great success stories.
Awesome. And then yes, in the bullpen, the lefty, we've got Paul Spaljarek. The righty, we've got Paul Quantrill. And from a setup standpoint, we've got John Axford. Rob, that's legit. That's a legit bullpen.
Yeah. All three of those guys, incredible. I played with Spoli in '88. That's when I first met him. We played together in the Junior World Championships in Australia. And I believe he is the first guy to beat Cuba. We beat Cuba 1-0.
Oh, wow.
Spoli pitched that game. And it was the most unbelievable game. One of the most unbelievable games I've seen at that point as a kid, 18 years old, watching him play against this team who we were all going in thinking we're going to be totally dominated. Cuba was a world championship. They're the best team, on the senior team, the junior team. And for him to shut them complete down as an 18-year-old was incredible. So we knew if there was one guy who had a chance to play professional baseball, it was Paul Spaljarek. He's 6'5", smooth arm, throws 93 miles an hour, good curveball. And, we ended up playing together in St. Catharines again in the New York Penn League, but he got hurt. So we all kind of worried that, his career could be over, but he got it back. He put it all back together and had a year in, let's see, like 94 where he just like blossomed, just unbelievable. He became like the best player in the minor leagues, like shooting straight up to the big leagues quickly. Might have been a few years later than that, but I just remember him being just a total dominant pitcher. And he ended up playing like 5-6 years in the big leagues. So I mean, Spoli is another success story. Small town guy from BC, Kelowna or Kamloops, I think is where he's from. Who teaches baseball out there? Right? All it is forests and snow hills and I don't know, tobogganing. It's funny where all these guys come from. Paul Quancho had more of an opportunity because he grew up, as Canadian, he grew up in America, played a lot of his baseball in America, played high school baseball, college. He was more American trained. But you want to talk about a guy who is so under the radar as well. Like if you told him to pitch 20 games in a row, he'd do it.
Jeez.
You know what I mean? I think he had the most appearances of a reliever one year in all of Major League Baseball. And the man had the rubber arm. Like we used to call him the rubber band man because he was never hurt, never sore, never any issues. You know what I mean? And I remember when he was telling us stories about when he came up with the Boston Red Sox and Roger Clemens used to chirp him all the time. And it was funny because I was like, most guys learn to not chirp Canadians too often because eventually they chirp back. So he was, I guess Roger Clemens told him, like they have a little bucket with gum and seeds and dip and everything. So, he kept telling Quancho he had to be on the bucket, had to be on the bucket, had to be on the bucket. So he told him to carry his towel. And Quancho was like, I'm not carrying your towel. And so Roger Clemens got like in his face.
Whoa.
And Quancho did not back down and was like nose to nose and saying, you know what, I will carry your gum, but I am not carrying your towel. So we're going there if we're going there. And from that point on, he had the ultimate respect from Roger Clemens. So Paul Quantrill carried that everywhere he went.
That's a wrap for this week's Locked On Blue Jays podcast. Thank you for spending time this week talking Toronto Blue Jay baseball with me. On the weekend, what do I always wish for you? And what do I wish for us? That our weekends are awesome, but that our weekends are full of Toronto Blue Jay victories.